My mother used to grow the vegetables in our household, and Dad used to grow the flowers. And I remember the world of the asparagus bed being quite distinct, with its weeds and that incredibly fast growth of the asparagus coming up. It was alongside a holly hedge, so there were always the prickles of the holly leaves. My earliest memory in the garden was of a pond that my dad created, and lying every day for the whole of the summer holidays and watching this clear water turn green, and then this alchemy as the green cleared. I remember the long grasses and the plants that we bought to put into the water, and all the associated life that came with it, the butterflies and the dragonflies, pond skaters, all those things that miraculously appeared in this watery lens. And we were very lucky in that there was a fantastic neighbour just along the lane called Geraldine Noyes. And I met her probably when I was about 5 or 6. And she opened her garden to me whenever I wanted to go along. So I'd walk along the lane and slip alongside the house through her shed into her garden. And she was a retired school teacher, absolutely brilliant person. She was a naturalist, a very keen gardener, and she knew no boundaries between weeds and ornamental plants. All plants were equal. So she'd part some grass and say, look at my Fritillaria paranoica and tell me all about the story of where it came from when she'd collected it. And that really brought the natural world that much closer into my consciousness. So I was primed by somebody who knew about ecology, she knew about wildlife, and she was this fantastically keen gardener as well. So she was a really big influence on my life. When we were living up yonder, every autumn an old lady called Miss Joy would come out of a hole in the hedge at the end of the lane with windfall apples which she collected from her orchard, and this hedge was enormous. It crept out onto the lane, and there was this tiny little black hole in it that she came in and out of, and all we could see of the house, Hill Cottage, was one chimney with a tree growing out of it. And eventually Miss Joy had a series of strokes back to back and very quickly died, and we went into this inner world one day, and I remember absolutely vividly the sense of place and the atmosphere as we descended the steps into this gloom and darkness of an acre's worth of garden that had completely overwhelmed Miss Joy for the best part of 50 years. And there were trees and laurel pressed against every window, rat holes under every single door in the house, and curtains rotting up from the floor. And it was a very potent and magical place. It was as frightening as it was compelling. Creepers had got in underneath the skirting boards and were wrapped round the furniture. And we didn't know how big the garden was because it was completely impenetrable. And Mum fell in love with this place and convinced my dad to buy it. We moved in and then spent the next few years discovering and, to a degree, reclaiming this forgotten garden. As we cleared it, we started to find features that had long been overwhelmed in the past. An old pond underneath a fallen tree, a bamboo grove which used to be an orchard, and these long borders which were just peonies and the odd daylily underneath 7-foot-high thickets of bramble. We started to find treasures which, to a young boy, were absolutely magical things to come upon. We spent several years, every weekend, having bonfires and clearing this garden. And because it was such a series of strong environments, there were pools of light coming into glades and damp places and dry places. I really started to love the idea of these different moods within this garden. I became acutely aware of this balance that we were disturbing every time we cleared a little glade to make a space to garden in. There'd be this fierce reaction from nature. The nettles would suddenly take over where there'd been equilibrium in the woodland, and we were battling against the ground elder, which suddenly loved all the extra light that we were pumping into the space through clearing. But I became really interested in this juxtaposition of the ornamental and the wild because we had to work with it all the time, and started to see that you could actually feather them together. People like Christopher Lloyd was writing about the juxtaposition of his long borders and the meadows right alongside, and this was a situation I had right underneath my fingertips.